Are we having a party here? I don't know.
Welcome to Polishing Profits. Join our 3 industry experts boasting 140 years of experience as they unlock building service contracting secrets that can revolutionize your business.
Welcome to Polishing Profits. And I suppose today you're wondering, what's that man going to say? Since I didn't prepare, hi, welcome to Polishing Profits. Sharon, you want to say hello?
Is that scripted or can I just speak? I can just
You
speak.
could just speak. Mine was not scripted, obviously.
Oh, well, we're never scripted. That's the issue. Welcome.
And we try to script Ed, but we have to pay the editor so much to cut out all the stuff he says. Right, Ed?
Well, today I am a tango dancer named Raul.
Lovely. We can get you to do the tango at the end or something. I'm sure nobody wants to see it, but we can try. So anyway, for those of you who tuned in and haven't seen these impromptu beginnings, this is kind of like our outtakes or whatever you have, moments that we just do them at the front rather than try to find them somewhere else in the video. So that's our shot for today. And just so everybody knows, we've all known each other a lot of years, decades, as a matter of fact. So if you think, geez, how did they get away with it? Well, and we've worked together in Janitorial Growth Alliance, my gosh, 6 or 7 years. So that's how we get away with it. Everybody knows and respects everybody. So it's all in fun, and hopefully you'll be interested enough to hear what kind of BS we're going to throw out each week. I can say BS, right?
Yes.
I guess.
That's everybody else's stuff. Our stuff is for real.
Yeah, very good. With that said, we get a lot of questions and are often asked, and everybody's probably heard one person's story or another. But we're going to just throw this out today as something different to do. Nobody wakes up one day and says, hey, I want to be a janitor. That's my goal in life. Yet there's more interesting, smart people in this business than a lot of others. So we often get asked, well, how did you get in this? So we're going to go quickly here, and we're not going to go long into it. But we're going to give a brief explanation of how we got in this. And I think Ed wanted to tag on and why we stayed in it. Why we stayed. So how we got in. So since I'm doing all the yakking, you two can flip a coin. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Sharon. I love your story, Sharon.
Well, I came from corporate America. I had spent about 7 or 8 years in retail fashion merchandising. So I was working for a women's clothing chain, and they were in all the major malls in the Southeast. I was a regional director of the Southeast and traveling every week, leaving Monday, coming back Thursday or Friday. Got to be old after 5 years of that. I had had enough. So I knew I wanted to buy a business. And the market that I'm in is very much driven by the service business. And that was in the 90s, early 90s, when service businesses were really the hot ticket. That was, if you were going to buy a business, start a business, that was what to be in. So I had an opportunity to purchase the business of the people that were cleaning my house at the time. I got word that the owner was looking to sell. It was a strictly residential company. And I met with the owner. She offered me an opportunity to come and work with her for a couple of weeks and see if I really liked it, since it was so different. It's really different. So first couple of days I'm in the office, and back then we didn't have computers yet. So it was all telephones, and the phone was ringing off the wall. This was a mom and pop operation. They were running it on the front of their porch of their house, a screened in regular part of the house. Very small office, but I was blown away by the activity. They had 4 or 6 employees, I don't remember. So I'm thinking this is pretty good. This is sounding really good. I like what I'm seeing and hearing. So one day she says to me, tomorrow when you come in, be sure you wear boots and jeans because we're going to go to a construction site where we're doing post-construction. I thought, okay. And up until then, I hadn't been wearing the business attire I was used to wearing. I was wearing much more casual clothes, but I didn't wear jeans. So that day I wore jeans. We got into her truck, which I had not seen yet, which was a rusted ladder truck, with a big ladder on it. And I get in and she hands me a hard hat. And she said, we need to wear this on the job site. So here we go out in the country on these dirt roads in this bouncing along in this truck. And I've got this hard hat on in these boots and jeans. And I'm thinking, my God, what am I getting myself into? What is this? People really work like this every day. It was just so different from what I was used to. But I found it so exciting. We went to the job site. I loved post-construction. It's a great segment of our industry. I really like that. Her business was all residential, which I took over. And I didn't like that from the get-go. So I hired a manager to manage that. I gave up my own salary. Fortunately, I was able to do that, give up my salary, paid it to the manager so I didn't have to deal. Then I started attracting commercial clients, and that was my niche. That was my comfort zone. I loved working with the business customer. And the residential grew, but the commercial just exploded. Because at that time, customers were not used to seeing people dress professionally, act professionally. They were used to guys with the dirty t-shirts and the torn jeans and the hat flipped back, and that was the typical cleaning company owner. Unfortunately, that's what you saw a lot of in small companies. So switched the company to commercial. We kept the residential. When I sold the company, we had about 80% commercial, 20% residential. I sold it at its peak. I had 140 employees at that time, and we were operating regionally through mid-central Florida and a little bit into South Florida and on the east coast of Florida. I've stayed in the business. It got its hooks into me. Whatever it is about this business just grabbed me. I like the change. I like something different every day. I like working with the customers. And now, of course, I work with the owners. Very challenging, an exciting business. And it's something different. And there's always going to be dirt. So there's always a need for us. We're not going away. So that's kind of my story. Wrapped it up. And here I am 33 years later.
Listen, timing had an awful lot to do with it. You just happened to be in a place where that was exploding at that time.
Yes.
I mean, it was like there was this enormous amount of people that were moving to the state. And so there was a very healthy real construction industry going on here. Yeah. Very healthy. So every once in a while it has to do with timing. So.
Yeah, very definitely. Very definitely.
Okay. All right. Well, I took all the wrong stuff in college. I thought that college had something to do with learning. And it took me a couple of years to figure out that it really didn't. It had nothing to do with learning. So what happened was I had married. We bought a house. We had car payments. And I decided that I wanted to go back to school. And so moved from the Fort Lauderdale area over here to the West Coast to go to USF, and signed in over at USF and entered the engineering program. In the meantime, I was trying to figure out what to do to how to pay the rent. Okay. And what happened was I learned that there was people that would tell us about the business and about the industry without being in the business or the industry. So I ran across, just strictly by accident, I was taking a magazine back then, and I read in a magazine, it was a teacher, a college professor at Harvard, that wrote something called Production Line Approach to Service. And with that, it occurred to me that this was really a business. All I was doing was try to get through college a second time. And, I wasn't in a position where I could go back and eat, peanut butter and crackers, So that was really the beginning for me. And what happened was every time I sold a company, I was so happy to get out. And I thought, okay, I'm done with this now. And sure enough, a few months went by and it's kind of like, wait a minute, that was good. I liked the money. That was good money. It came in all the time, and that was really the beauty of it. There was repetitive revenue coming in. And I tried to think about, well, what else is like this? And I had looked at other businesses. Thankfully, we did not open a movie theater. And there was a couple of other things, selling fair food at the fair, like fried stuff in a trailer, We looked at a couple of different things, and the cleaning thing just made an awful lot of sense. And so I bought 2 accounts from a fellow who owned a little cleaning service. And what he did was his wife was suffering from an awful, awful, awful form of arthritis. And what he did was every time he needed a couple of bucks, what he would do is he would sell one of his accounts. And he had done this several times, and it was great to raise money, And he told me the story. The great part was this was a professor of English. And he gave me like all the paperwork. And all the paperwork was like poetry. It was really funny, It was really funny. But it started out with just, let me get through school again, all right? And it turned out that, I got into the business. I took it seriously is what happened. And I started to learn and make it grow and all that stuff. And I've left a couple of times, but they were always for short periods of time after I had sold the company. You can't stay in the same business, in the same area after you've sold the company. So a couple of times I've done a couple of different things. One of them was I was a data broker over at a place called Info USA. It was they're data brokers is what they were. As a matter of fact, they were the biggest in the world at one point. And at any rate, what I found was that first company was an absolute nightmare. I always describe it as that moment of impact when you are about that split second when you're going to crash. Okay? It was like that 24/7. Always had the feeling that, like impending doom, And it went on for 24/7, and I didn't realize it at the time, but what I had built up was something that could be sold. So I did sell it. I had gotten in trouble buying expensive equipment that I needed for a new account I had gotten. And after I was in there about 6 weeks, they went bankrupt. And I'm stuck with like $16,000 worth of cleaning equipment. And so what are my options here? One of the options was to sell the thing, and I did. And that was successful. And what happened for me was it was a repetitive money. It was money that came in all the time, unlike almost everything else. The only thing I thought that was close to it were insurance agents because they get renewals. So they make a sale. I mean, I paid on my life insurance policy for, 35 years, So that was that. But what I found was there was a couple of lessons there. One of them was it was a smart move to sell the company. It really was. And today I counsel people. I says, look, if you're having a hard time in your first go around, think about this for a second. Maybe this is only a practice run. It might only be a practice run. So on the 4th company that I started, we hit it out of the park. And we wound up with, at one point, we were just at 500 people, 493 employees. It wasn't very far spread out. And so it was controllable. And I had learned an awful lot. And so that one went very smooth. And that was the one that I hit it out of the park with. And that was it.
Huh?
Well, the rest of the story was I wound up going to work for all these national companies.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting in this guy's office, and there's a fellow he's got a gold chain, and he's from New York. And, he tells me with this big, big smile, he says, we're a $150 million cleaning service, and we do not own a vacuum cleaner. And it was like, oh, nice trick. How does that work? And that, of course, that opened the door to the whole retail sector for me and the entire subcontracting thing. So,
all right. Well, I guess I've stalled long enough, so it's my turn here. Neither of you, Ed kind of stumbled into it. Sharon bought into it. So that was definitely a conscious decision to get out of the corporate world. And I'm kind of a combination. Well, I'm not a combination. I didn't come out of the corporate world. I just had nothing to do. And my dad said, here, clean these. He was in charge of 3 bank buildings. Said, clean these. I'm sick of fighting with the janitors. That's how I got in it.
Yeah.
And that I was a senior in high school. And So I said, well, why do I have to do? He said, I can yell at you and I've got leverage over you. I want the building clean. So he took me out and showed me what he wanted. So strange turn of events. When I was about, halfway through my first year of college, guy came in knocking on the door and wanted to clean his account. And my dad, being the consummate salesperson, said, well, I've got that handled, but my son needs more work. He's going to school. Are you hiring? So he took my name on the back of my dad's card and called me. And that company was Environment Control. And they were a franchise organization. And they're still around, by the way. And this was like 19. So to roll it up very fastly, I cleaned buildings. And like Ed, I thought this is good money. Back then, I was getting $1.87 an hour. I had 9 accounts I cleaned, in between classes and running back and forth and everything else I was doing. And after about 4 or 5 months, I kind of figured out I had an 8-hour run. I could do this thing in 5.5 hours. So being the brilliant mathematician that I am, I realized I was making double the $1.87. I thought, this isn't a bad gig. Everybody leaves me alone. They only come around if I do my job. No one complains. I'm left alone. Every now and again, I got to fix things that are not clean. This is pretty darn good. So that moved into the floor guy quitting the air. So next question, can you do floors? And I said, what's it take? And they walk in with a slow speed buffer and say, do this, flip the pad, polish it. And that was my introduction to floor work. How hard can this be, right? So I worked a couple of years doing all of that.
Wait a minute. Don't pass over the story the first time you put your hands on a floor machine, because you went to college and everybody knows that only an idiot can work a floor machine.
Yeah.
Remember that? Your first time with the floor machine?
Well, yeah, I do, because it got out of my hands, went around, wrapped up all the cord, and drug the handle along the wall and left a mark I had to clean off. I also have a story about that. We had a moving company called Beacons. Remember the old asbestos counters way back in the day that came out?
Yeah.
They wanted it shined. We couldn't get it shiny. So this was good thinking. So the two of us, I had the area manager then with me. We pick up the buffer, and this was a big, long counter, about 20 feet and about 5 feet wide. We're going to spray buff the thing. So we get it up on the counter, which is 4 feet high. There's a plate glass window with the big name. Oh, you hear this coming.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we're about halfway down the counter thinking, we finally figured this out. Yeah, yours truly got up there. The pad stuck through the buffer, right through the plate glass window. We couldn't find the contact all weekend. So I had to stay there all weekend. We had to notify the police. The building was exposed. They didn't have an alarm back then. And there I wait Monday morning. What happened? I put the buffer through the window. He said, how did you do that? I said, you don't want to know. The company will pay for it. He said, fair enough. That was the end of that. So, yeah. So I kind of cut my teeth all the way through there. And, a lot of people, we are having this discussion pre-roll. Everybody says, well, how do I learn how to bid? How do I learn how to do this stuff? Go to work for somebody else. I spent 4 years with this company before I started my business. And I worked my way all the way up from what little bit it was to an area manager. Probably in that time, they're a big company. For them was about $5,000 a month at that point, maybe 3. So I was probably running all, $50,000 a month in business. But back then, if you put it in those dollars, you got to multiply that by 10 something today with all the changes in the economy to today's dollar. And I learned the business. I became the supervisor, the area manager. And then one day we were having a couple of beers out on the patio with some friends. They wanted to move me to La Habra, California, the executive office, and I didn't want to move there. So the owner was selling up here that had the franchise. I had this brilliant light bulb moment. How hard can this be? All we need is a little bit of money and we can start this thing. And that's how I got into it. So I started all the way in the beginning in college as a pre-med major and wound up a janitor, okay? So that's how I got into it. But when I got in, I thought I knew everything. Obviously, I didn't. I still don't. I mean, there's always something to learn when you're dealing with people. But that's how I got into it and thought, well, I can make as much doing this as I can going to work for somebody else. So I started out, I kind of bootstrapped it. I worked for the other company for about 8 months till they found out I was building my own janitorial service. And the way he found out, he called my answering machine and I was gone. And it said, "Thank you for calling Coast Building Maintenance. If you're looking for a proposal," we didn't have phones back then. So I have this message, this is blank, blank, blank. And I'm sorry to inform you that you are now unemployed. I didn't realize you were my competition. Okay. So I had a $20 a week account. And so I'll roll it all up, everything else we did. And a lot of people have heard a lot of this. So if you've heard it, I'm trying to put something in it. And when I sold the company, we had 300 full-time people, 24/7, 365 facility maintenance, as well as all the cleaning and all the different industries. We were in 3 states out here, plus we did national consulting work and things like that. So we had a great team of people, and we sold our old friends Marsden, who Ed knows well. And it's
great company. Good company.
Good company. They're at $500 million now, I think.
Wow.
They were about 300 when they purchased me a few years ago, 300 million. So, yeah. And then I moved into the consulting. I guess you just can't give it up. I took about 8 months off and thought, I got to do something. So you and Sharon were doing this, and I thought, another great statement. How hard can this be? Well, I found out. So that brings me to today.
Well, I went to every convention in the beginning because I didn't know anything about the industry. I could bring my corporate business experience, but industry specific, I didn't know anything. And those first 3 months, I bid on 2 huge school commercial accounts and a huge 2-story, I don't know how many square feet, but a big real estate sales office. They had like 40, 45 agents in there. 2-story thing. I bid on both of those within my first 3 months of owning the company, and I got them both. And months later, years later, when I finally learned how to bid and estimate, I understood why I got them. I was so dirt cheap, they couldn't pass me up. It was awful. It was awful. But I went to the BSCAI. ISSA was not really open at that time to contractors. It was suppliers.
Yep.
So BSCAI was the only thing that was around. And I was like a sponge. I just went to everything, went to webinars, went all over to conferences, went to Cleaning Management Institute, went to many of their things. So I just educated myself, and then trial and error, learn and get burned, and
learn and burn, right?
Yeah, learn and burn. Burn and learn, maybe is a better way to put it.
Yeah, whichever. Make money, lose money, make money, lose money, lose money, lose money, break even, make money.
And there were not consultants around like there are today. If I could have
there was none of this available.
None of that.
What there was that there were professionals from other businesses that they were just business people, okay? And they were an awful lot of help. One of my contacts, somebody that was very, very kind to me, he had been a senior vice president at Montgomery Wards. He was retired down here, and we became friendly, and he taught me an awful lot, and it was just basic business stuff. That was one. There was another fellow that I ran into, and this was an interesting guy. He had an MBA at Wharton, and he went to work for Citicorp under contract to the State Department. And his job was dealing with third world debt. And what happened was he wound up in Afghanistan, and this button-down, 3-piece suit fellow in Afghanistan smoked hash. And he became a bust-out hippie.
Oh, wow.
Okay. No more suit. But he had this incredible background. So, to be able to talk to this guy, and all for picking up a lunch tab, was an incredible, incredible experience. He was the one that told me, he says, "We'll bill in advance." He says, "We'll bill in advance." I was like, oh, geez. Okay. All right. So that's what we had. We had professionals out of other industries that we would lean on.
Yeah.
The other The other thing is, and say something about this, but what was the role of our supply people back then? Our Jansan supply people.
But we've talked about that. It was huge. You grew your company through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They came out and trained, demoed stuff, gave you equipment as you built the relationship.
They were
That
your right arm. Came to
it would have
operating.
been business wouldn't have gone where it didn't go if I hadn't had a good Jansan rep
Mhm.
the whole
Right.
time I was in business.
Yeah.
I
me
mean,
too.
when I got in trouble, all I had to do was make a phone call.
Yeah.
And I can remember instances with carpets, they actually flew people out of California. We had a small mess at Boeing. Boeing's got a small mess now, but that's neither here nor
Yes,
there.
they do.
We were doing their large corporate campus. So, but they actually flew somebody up and spent time with me. I mean, those are the kind of support that we got from them. And stripping, refinishing. I can remember my Jan Sands Ed, so can you, Sharon, meeting me at 8:00 at night on account in their jeans and throwing, solution on a floor and showing you how this stuff works, set up, what you have to do. Or you got stuck, they'd come out and say, you need these things to remove this level of lacquering on the floors. The old finishes used to lacquer a lot and stick on the floors and not come off. So yeah, they were very instrumental.
They were. That was the only source of knowledge at all. Didn't find a BSCA for almost 2 years. I was in the business 2 years, and then it was like, oh, wait a minute, we have a trade group. Wait a minute, we have a magazine. It's like, holy smoke.
Yep.
And that opened an awful lot of doors. But the people who helped me, I remembered, and, that's a little bit about what goes on in my head about giving back a little bit.
Yeah.
So, there was people who were very, very, very kind to me. Very, very kind.
Yeah.
So.
I was about 7 or 8 years in before I ran into BSCAI and how I ran into them. Remember Daniel and Associates?
Oh, sure.
Greg?
Yeah.
We had a few people teaching stuff, and it was very expensive to get the information. They had a bidding program we went to. But he was still teaching. Yeah, well, learned a lot. I also learned that I had to really trim that back so I'd win a job, but that's another story for another day. But we really learned how to tear the thing apart. And he said, well, you should join this company, BSCAI or organization. And then I ran into a key guy out of Seattle. I'm out in the Northwest, as everybody knows. So, and he had been in it very early on, almost just after the inception, and he got me involved. So but I got an awful lot out of that association.
One of the things that came out of the BSCAI was how many wonderful, bright people are in the business.
Oh,
yes.
There's some really wonderful, kind, generous people in our industry. Okay. And, they're very sharp,
Yeah.
and very thankful that, but they're always willing to help, and as long as you knew your place, and my place was, as a young guy, it was like, keep my mouth shut and just listen.
Yeah, be quiet and listen. Take notes.
Just be quiet.
Yeah.
Just be quiet. So,
yeah.
So,
well, anybody want to add anything? We're going to wrap this up. We're at just about 32 minutes, and that's our goal to wrap by the time the edit gets done. So, any other wise words of advice? There's a little bit about us, a little bit of the backstories. With 150 years of combined experience, we could probably talk till the next 100 years, but no one wants to hear that.
No.
Ooh, that sounds painful.
Yeah.
Well, none of us have 100 years. Yeah. I don't know what you're planning on. My runway looks like 15 if I'm really lucky, okay?
Well, look, listen, we all get tickets to Elvis at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Elvis has left the building. Speaking of leaving the building, thanks for watching Polishing Profits. Wherever fine podcasts are found, we'll be there, and we'll see you on the next episode. Everybody take care. Adios.
Bye.